So welcome back. I haven't been on YouTube for a while, mainly because we didn't have a working computer, but we're back to it now. And the first one I wanted to do for a long time is to try and recreate my UFO sighting in 2018. I'm providing a link in the description. Used to be under these videos, you now have to press the more button to find it. And I did this interview for the UFO Chronicles podcast about this sighting, so you might find it interesting to listen to that as well. This is some bits of film and photos I've taken on Clifton Down, following the same route that I took then. Obviously, not with exactly the same weather conditions or exactly the same lighting, and it's probably a few days later in the year than it was then. But this is my recreation of my UFO sighting, which was almost exactly 5 years ago on Clifton Downs, Bristol. And let's go. So having walked diagonally across the downs on the grass, I just walked past the water tower and glanced over to my left towards the road, exactly as you see here. And I saw an object in the sky above the tree line. So my first thoughts were, is it a bird? It was too big to be a bird at that distance, and I also think I'm good at recognising birds. I go on a lot of country walks. Second thought was, it would have to be something like an eagle to be visible at that distance if it was a bird. And we don't have hovering eagles on the Clifton Downs in Bristol. So I felt as if I was in a little bit of a trance. I carried on walking slowly on what would be my normal route home, thinking that when I crossed over the road, I would have another look to see if it was still there. When I stood on this pavement, looking down this narrow bit of road here, and looked up, it was in the sky, not quite above me, a bit to my left. I couldn't work out if I'd actually walked towards where it was or if it had started following me, started moving along with me. It had hardly moved in the sky in relation to the wind. The wind was blowing towards it, and yet it was moving towards me or across my path. So it was, if you like, moving across the wind, like a boat goes across the tide on the sea. Tacking, it's called on the sea. This was giving me an uncomfortable feeling, very uncomfortable feeling. I cut off the pavement because I felt a bit of a bloody idiot, standing staring up at something that literally nobody else was looking at. All the traffic and people on the downs going home, going about their business. It was only me looking at this thing. So I crossed and went onto this bit of a green here, where I would be out of people's way. And this is pretty much the final point where I stood and looked up at it. In all this time, I'd been able to see this office building on the left, which gave me a sort of judge of how high this thing was. And I judged it to be a bit higher than that building. So, I don't know, 150, 200 feet up in the air? I couldn't guess its size. Obviously much bigger than any kind of bird or drone I'd ever heard of. I estimated about the size of a minibus up in the sky. That was my estimate. I was at this point very, very uncomfortable. I was mesmerised by that thing. I was getting to the point where I really didn't want to be looking at it anymore. And then something even more bizarre happened. as if just having this thing above me in the air wasn't enough, and with me seeming to be the only person looking at it, coming down towards me from the underneath of it were a couple of little twinkling lights, like little blue LED lights, just like those little bar lights cyclists have instead of headlamps these days. They were just visible against the white clouds, and they had a kind of blue colour, so flickering sort of blue lights. I had the very distinct feeling that it had only just started lowering these lights down, that they weren't there before, and they were coming down towards me on like two thin wires. And I really didn't like the idea that this thing was actually noticing me or luring these things towards me for some reason. Didn't like it at all. And I tried very hard to kind of snap out of this feeling of being in a trance, staring up at it. So I basically put my head down and turned away from it and walked across the roundabout, across the road, past the bottom of the office building, and tried to follow my normal route home, thinking, I don't want to look back. I don't want to see if it's still there. I'm going to carry on further down the hill. And maybe when I get to a point where I think I'm far enough away, I'll turn around and look back and see if it's still in the sky. When I got past the Steiner School, which is quite a tall red building, you can see it right across Bristol from the other side of town, I turned around to have a look. And yes, it was still in the sky. And you can see from my diagram that I gave to the UFO Chronicles podcast how it had changed its shape purely because of the angle I was now seeing it. It seemed to have moved southwards. It seemed to be higher up. It was more silhouetted against the sky. It now had this distinct V shape, so the things sticking out to the sides appeared that they really were a kind of wing, and that previously I'd been seeing them straight on from underneath, as if they were outstretched. And at this point, I didn't know what to think, and then I was interrupted by a couple of people who came up the road, and I turned to look at them. They were an elderly man and a lady, and the guy looked straight at me and said, "Are you looking at it too?" And these were the first people who I had any idea had looked up at it, noticed it, been observing it, or who had stopped to ask me what the hell I was doing standing on the pavement staring out into the sky. These were the first people I'd interacted with in the whole time this had been going on, which by this time was over half an hour. So we stood on the pavement, all three of us, and had quite a mad conversation about what it could be. And our guesses ranged from things like an experiment being conducted by the local university to something that was tethered to a high building to warn aeroplanes. This is how mad our thoughts were, because we could not figure out what it was. The old man told me that, I'm saying old, they were relatively old to me. They seemed to be in their 70s or 80s. He said that they'd just come from a pub up the road, and he named the pub, which I'm not going to name here. And he said, oh, half the pub is outside in the front car park watching this thing, and somebody's even gone for a pair of binoculars. Now, this sounded plausible to me. The pub he was talking about was only about 200 yards away, up a hill, round the corner. It would have had a good view back in that direction, towards the Downs. Seemed perfectly plausible what he had said. Had no reason to disbelieve him. But we came to a dead end, you know. We couldn't think of any more to say about it. and it disappeared into low cloud. So that was it. I went home, hardly talked to anybody about it, tried to ask around the next day and during the next week if anybody had even heard of such a thing. It didn't come up on the local media. I have never been able to find anything on the internet exactly like it ever since. And the only thing that made me think I wanted to talk about it was the recent revelations in America from the fighter pilot evidence of what they're now calling UAPs. And one of them had a very similar shape to this. So I'm just showing you what I mean by that. And that's what jogged me to maybe try and find out more about it. And so I went on the UFO Chronicles podcast. So do have a listen to that. And if you know anybody who witnessed this as well, or you have any thoughts what it could possibly have been, and here's a list of the things it definitely wasn't, be my guest and leave it in the comments.